Um, I went on a depot injection, like the injection form of antipsychotics, and I gained like 50, 60 pounds at one
Oh my
point.
goodness.
Yeah, so that was really difficult to navigate, and probably also triggered more intense struggle with my eating disorder as well. So, yeah, it's not easy being on these kinds of medication.
Yeah, that would be very difficult to already be dealing with, an eating disorder and then gain 50, 60 pounds. That's quite a bit. That would be very, very difficult. I don't want to spend too much time wallowing around in the kind of low points, but if you don't mind, can you describe at least the last time that you went in the hospital, what you believe triggered it, what that was like to get into the hospital, what it's like inside a hospital? Do you mind sharing at least some details about that?
Sure, yeah. So my last experience was a little bit different than all of the hospitalizations prior to that. So prior to that, what often happened, I guess I was hospitalized the first two times for suicide attempts and then like manic episodes, but oftentimes I would stop taking my medication. Um, this was oftentimes because I would get paranoid about the medication being not good for me, poisonous in some way, or mind control, or, those kind of paranoid spirals that I would get into. And every time I went off my medication, I would very quickly fall into pretty deep psychosis and then inevitably have to be hospitalized. But the last time I was hospitalized, actually, I did not go off my medication, but I did still experience a psychotic episode. And I think what happened that time was that I was training for a marathon. And so I was running more than usual. And I think what happened was my body started to metabolize the medications that I was on differently or more, however that changed. And so, yeah, I had to increase my antipsychotic medication in that hospitalization. But yeah, I have a video on our channel where I kind of vlogged a day of that hospitalization and kind of tried to demystify, I guess, what it's like to be in a psychiatric hospital. It's really not a place where you get much in the way of treatment or really help with your psychiatric illness. It's really more a place to kind of stabilize on meds and make sure you're safe before you can go back into the community to kind of actually work on the issue. And that's kind of been my experience across the board, where the hospital really has been more a place just to kind of stay safe and stabilize.
Got it. You describe in the hospital this room that's like an isolating room, and I know most people don't get it, not like kept there forever. But you mentioned how important connection was in the beginning of this interview, and like to put somebody in complete isolation, that must be, I don't know, that must be terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not great. I've been to several different hospitals and they all seem to have this kind of room that's like very sterile and like concrete bricks and not much in the way of a bed. It's like a metal gurney. And for some reason, well, I guess I understand the reason. They're trying to keep you and everyone else safe if you're experiencing a psychotic episode and you maybe, yeah, are not super in control of how you're behaving. But yeah, it's always been a really, really negative and almost traumatic experience to be just kind of kept in one of those cells, for lack of a better word, units or rooms, with little, yeah, contact or help or support. And so I think we have a lot of improvements that could be made in terms of how we help people experiencing psychiatric distress in a hospital setting. But yeah, again,
Yeah.
it's really just there to keep you safe while you stabilize.
I appreciate that. As you're going through an episode, this last one again over a year ago, you described before you went into the hospital that you were like locking yourself in the car, and Rob was trying to help get you out, but you had the keys, and so they had to call the police. Like, are you when you are going through this, do you recall being aware of what is going on with like Rob really caring about you and trying to do the best for you, or do you somewhat kind of lose a sense of how you're reacting to the situation?
It's hard to describe, but I think that psychosis for me, my experience of it is really just you're kind of living in the same world that you always live in, but kind of every element of the reality that you're experiencing, so I guess not really reality, is different or is shifted or altered in some way. And oftentimes it's very laced with, paranoia or, delusional thinking about people or things around you. And so, yeah, even though I know that Rob was coming at that experience or trying to navigate that from a loving and supportive place, the narrative within my head and how I was experiencing it was that he was against me, or, that kind of paranoid thinking or delusional thinking that people are out to get you or are conspiring against you in some way has always been very prominent in my experience of psychosis.
Got it. Yeah. We always talk about what it's like to go through. It's also so difficult to be supportive in that type of environment. So I appreciate that perspective from both sides. This story gets a lot better, and there's a lot of good news. When was the first time you heard about metabolic therapies for things like mental illness?
Yeah. So the first time I was hospitalized while with Rob was in 2019. And that was one of the times where I got paranoid about my medication and stopped taking it and ended up very quickly psychotic and in the hospital. And so that was kind of the first like really big experience that I went through with Rob. And so following that, Rob actually tried to do a bunch of research into potential other ways to treat or manage schizoaffective disorder that may help with what I was doing in terms of medication therapy and whatnot. And he took out a book from the library, just kind of trying to learn more about potential alternative treatments for schizophrenia and about gut health and mental illness and all that kind of stuff. I think it was called Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Natasha Campbell McBride. And in that, he read about the ketogenic diet as a potential treatment for mental illness, particularly schizophrenia. And so we actually decided to give it a go and try using medical keto. Well, we didn't really know what medical keto was. So using the ketogenic diet and the limited information we knew about it back at the beginning of 2020.
Oh wow.
But we did a really, really bad job of it because, again, we did not know what medical keto was. And a lot of the information about out there about keto is, very much the kind of fad weight loss diet information. And so it was difficult to know how to use it as an effective medical intervention. And so we didn't do it well. We were on it for about 2 months, and then, the pandemic hit, kids were home, super stressed out. It wasn't really working. And so we just kind of scrapped it. But we always kind of stayed a little bit curious about it and potential ways where we could actually use it in a better way. And we ended up having Dr. Christopher Palmer onto our channel for an interview in, I think it was February of 2023, just to kind of learn more about, metabolic dysfunction and how it relates to mental illness and if they're the same thing, and using the medical ketogenic intervention for mental illness. And so, yeah, that was something that was really on our mind and we were curious about. And then again, I ended up hospitalized in June 2023. And yeah, it kind of was more encouragement to figure out a better way, a potentially better way to treat or manage this. And so in December of 2023, we decided to give it a really good go. And yeah, we connected with people like Metabolic Mind, who helped connect us with Nicole Laurent, who has been just so instrumental in terms of doing it in a proper, medical intervention way. Got my psychiatrist and my GP on board. And yeah, we dove into just learning as much as we could about how to use it properly as a medical intervention.
Okay. I would definitely recommend Dr. Chris Palmer if you have questions about mental health and diet. That is a very good source of information. He's amazing. We're so honored to have hosted him as well. His book Brain Energy is incredible. And I love hearing him talk, and like the passion in his voice is it's so strong. I love it. I'm curious, the first time you quasi kind of tried keto, I love the way Nicole describes it. Like keto for mental health should be kind of medical kind of keto. It's very different. She kind of describes it like this is like we're not goofing around keto. This isn't like the magazine that you see at the grocery store and just melting a stick of butter in your coffee kind of keto. Like this is really serious and there's a right way to do this. But I'm so curious, doing it somewhat the first time, did you notice any benefit that time?
Um, I maybe did notice like a bit of increased mental clarity, and just stuff like no bloating or anything, which was nice. Um, but yeah, again, we just weren't doing it well. And we also weren't understanding it as a part of, metabolic therapies in general. So the only thing we were doing really was what we thought was, keto. But again, we were not looking at electrolytes. So we struggled with keto flu for a very long time and kind of never really got out of that. No supplementation. We were still doing things like drinking alcohol and just counting that into our daily carb intake, which is big no. And yeah, I think we did not have an understanding of how to properly stick to it as a medical intervention. So we didn't really get much of, yeah, the benefits that we're seeing this time around.
Got it. Okay, so December 2023 version of the diet. What things were different? What things were the main focuses, and how did you respond? And did Rob do the same thing with you? How did it go the second time?
Yeah, so we are both doing it. Rob has been doing it the whole 8 months or however long it's been since December 23 with me. We really tried to learn as much as possible. So, read Brain Energy, consumed a bunch of other literature by, we throughout this process, we've read books by Dr. Georgia Ede. Her book, Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind is wonderful. Working through things like Casey Means, or what is it, Good Energy, just trying to consume as much information as possible to educate ourselves about this as, an actual metabolic intervention. Connected with Nicole Laurent, and she really helped to guide us in terms of creating specific macros for us in terms of how much fat we needed to hit every day, protein, carbohydrates. And she really kind of guided us in terms of how to effectively, yeah, work on hitting those macros. So we started weighing all of our food and tracking it in an app called Chronometer, which really helped to kind of get an idea of, what we were fueling our body with and trying to really focus on hitting the proper elements. Learn more about stuff like, staying away from seed oils and stuff that maybe we had made mistakes about in the past, or staying away from late products that are, labeled keto, but are not really, still full of gluten or other things that are not going to be conducive for actually improving mental health as, a part of metabolic repair. Yeah. And then we also really focused on other components of metabolic therapies as well. So really tried to get regimented and routined about exercise, sleep, abstaining from drugs and alcohol, social connection, and just kind of working on all of those things as a part of metabolic therapy.